All right, guys. So today I'm up here in my garage cleaning my boat out, trying to get everything ready for the spring season, which seems like it's forever away, but really not. And I want to cover a topic today that I don't feel like a lot of people cover. And I did it on my live the other day. If you guys tuned in last Tuesday, I apologize for the revamping of the material here. But this is something I feel like should be covered because me, as an angler, I didn't have a really good understanding of what the difference between the two were. And what I'm talking about is the difference between tungsten weights and lead weights. And again, I am no expert at this, but I'm just going to give you a rundown really quickly in just a few minutes here of why the difference between lead and tungsten makes a huge difference. So some of you guys may know I do have my own brand of tungsten out there right now. It's just called On Another Line Tungsten. Here, it's one of those deals where I'll have these things around with me. They're not going to be for sale online or anything right now. You have to get with me to get them, but they're going to be cheaper than you've ever seen just to get my name out there. Again, the reason is that right here on the back, on this little card, this little QR code right here, actually will take you to my YouTube channel, which is, it's just some marketing for myself. I'm not making any money off this tungsten, guys. It's just a marketing thing for me. But today we're going to talk about the differentiation between tungsten, which is here. Get my camera to focus on it here. This is a 3/4 ounce. You can see right here on the package. If I can get my camera to focus there. 3/4 ounce worm weight. And on the other side of that, this right here is a 5/16. If I can get my camera to focus. This is a 5/16 ounce lead weight. Now I want you to think about this. This little lead weight right here is a little over, quarter ounce. 4/16 would be a quarter of an ounce. This is, a 1/16 of an ounce higher than that. Now, when you look at these two weights together, the black one obviously is tungsten. The gray one is the lead weight. Again, the gray one is 5/16, whereas this is a 3/4 ounce weight. Now, a lot of people say, what's the difference? Why should I pay a really high price for tungsten, and why does it matter? Well, on the molecular side of things, if you want to get scientific about it, tungsten is around 1.7 times more dense than lead. Now, when you think about that, what does that mean? Well, that means the molecules of that is actually compacted or compressed a lot tighter than lead. And the reason that's really helpful is that you can get a lot more weight in a smaller form factor when it comes to tungsten. Now, another thing is that when it comes to being like that is that you get a lot more sensitivity when it comes to density. So I want you to think about this, and this is just a very rudimentary, explanation of it. This is way over exaggerated, but I want you to think about taking a steel ball and I want you to drop it on a piece of steel, and just think about that in your head, what would happen. That steel ball hitting that piece of steel, it's going to ring out. You can go from one end of that steel to the other and hear that thud or hear that, that vibration transfers through that harder material. Now again, I want you to think about this as a very over exaggeration. Now lead, when it comes down to it, I want you to think about taking that same lead or the same steel ball, and I want you to drop that steel ball into something like Play-Doh. Again, an over exaggeration, but it's going to absorb some of that energy, and it's going to absorb some of those vibrations, and it's going to cause that vibration to end or be deadened within that the material or the medium when it comes to lead. Now, with tungsten being a lot more dense, is that it allows transfer of energy a lot better. Now, granted, there's a lot of stuff that comes into consideration here. What kind of line are you using? What kind of rod are you using? What kind of reel are you using? Are you using a leader? How deep are you fishing? Is it sandy bottom, etc.? Where should you choose to fish tungsten as opposed to lead? Now, I will tell you again, in my opinion, and take this for what it's worth, I do believe the transfer of energy, which equates into sensitivity, is going to be almost double when it comes to tungsten versus lead. Again, because lead is a really soft material, whereas tungsten is really, really hard. Again, another thing about this is that, you can melt your own lead and create your own baits using do-it molds or whatever you use. That's what I use, obviously, do-it. But tungsten, on the other hand, I think there's one manufacturer, one company that's manufacturing tungsten in the United States, and that's Titan Tungsten, if I'm not mistaken. But 99% of every piece of tungsten that you tie onto your line is coming from China. The reason that is because tungsten, there's no, as far as I know, correct me if I'm wrong, there's no man-made flame that gets hot enough to melt tungsten. I'm thinking the tungsten, melts somewhere in the 2,000 degree Fahrenheit range, and that is extremely hot. Whereas lead is something like 700. Again, that's just off the top of my head. I'm probably totally wrong on that, but it's way less than it comes to tungsten. There are some health risks and hazards that come with lead. So if you're pouring your own lead baits or whatever, make sure you're doing it in a well-ventilated area. Make sure you're doing what you need to do to keep your health, in check. But the cons of tungsten versus lead, because in my opinion, there's very few cons when it comes to tungsten. One of the biggest cons is the sheer cost of these things. Guys, a 3/4 ounce worm weight like this, if you go somewhere and you buy it in a store, like you go to the tackle box or you go to Borders or you order it on Tackle Warehouse or what have you, this stuff is somewhere, this one weight is anywhere from $5 to $10 a piece. Each one of these. You could buy a 30 pack of these little 5/16 ounce weights like this for tungsten or for a lead for less than a couple bucks. So that is one of the major downfalls. I think the pros and cons, definitely the pros outweigh the cons when it comes to tungsten. However, there are opportunities where I do not throw tungsten. I pour my own baits. You guys have seen it on my channel 100 times. I use, do-it molds when it comes to all my lead pouring stuff. But there, I've poured stuff like shaky heads or blade baits or Midwest finesse jigs, or also known as a Ned rig. I have the weedless one and the regular Midwest finesse jig. Jigs like football head jig, poison tail jig I have from them. I have a plethora of bait molds. And I choose to pour my own baits and throw them a lot of times when I'm throwing baits like that. And they're all lead. Again, as far as I know, there's no man-made flame or anything out there that will get hot enough to melt tungsten. Which brings me back to another point. If you look here on my tungsten, you'll see it there in that little white bubble. It says 97% pure tungsten. And the reason that is, when you look at that, you're thinking, wow, Waller's got this tungsten that's not even pure tungsten. Well, that's the way with all tungsten, guys. There's some kind of binding agent in here, usually lead or bismuth or something, and what they do is they take tungsten powder and they smash it together with this binding agent in a really high pressure situation, from what I understand, and that's what creates these things. A couple of things that I want you to look for when you're creating when you're buying this tungsten. One, again, 99% of this stuff is coming from China, and I would almost guarantee that a lot of this stuff is coming maybe from the same 5 factories in China. Now, not all tungsten is created the same when it comes to weights like this. There are some, I think there's a lot of people moving away from it, but just be mindful. If you see something that has an insert in the weight, stay away from that thing. Mine are diamond polished, as well as, about 95% of them out there on the market. There's a diamond hone that runs through this that keeps your line from fraying. Again, be sure that you are looking and doing your due diligence. If you're finding tungsten that has inserts in it, you want to stay away from that. Again, that does fray, does cause line breakage and stuff like that. You want to look for something that's diamond polished and there's no inserts. But again, tungsten, just I don't want to spend a ton of time on here. There's a lot of stuff we could talk about. But again, tungsten is about 1.7 times more dense than lead, which is going to equate to more sensitivity. Do I throw tungsten all the time? I do not. If I'm throwing a Texas rig bait or something like I like tungsten on a Carolina rig, if I can pour it, guys, I'm using lead, just for the simple fact of cost savings for me in the long run. I fish an absolute ton, and I absolutely lose a ton of different baits. And if I can pour them for pennies on the dollar, I'm going to do that. One, is therapeutic to me. I can go in my garage, especially during the wintertime when it's too cold to fish. I can get my molds out, I can pour a bunch of stuff. And the other cool thing is I can give it to my buddies. They can catch fish on it. I get these pictures. It's all good stuff. But there are times where I don't throw tungsten. I believe that anything that you have that's bottom contact, jigs or anything like that, and you don't pour your own baits, I feel like tungsten has a major advantage over lead because, again, it's more sensitive. The biggest con between tungsten and lead is the sheer cost of it. And again, this 1 3/4 ounce worm weight, if you were to buy a major competing brands, you know, tungsten out there, this one weight is going to run you anywhere from $6 to $10 a piece, and that is astronomical in my opinion, especially when you're on a budget like I am. So you're throwing these things around, you break one off, it sucks. However, I do feel like that the smaller form factor, again, it's more dense. The molecules are compressed or compacted a lot closer together in this, which allows you to have more weight in a smaller form factor. Again, if I can get my camera to focus in here on these weights, you can see here now the difference on the size here. The black one is a 3/4 ounce tungsten, and the gray one is a 5/16 ounce lead weight. Now, that is one of the biggest pros when it comes to tungsten. You get a lot more weight in a smaller profile. I can drag this weight way easier through brush and stuff than I could a big giant 3/4 ounce weight if it was lead. I fish lead on all my Texas rigs, no matter if it's really small down to like an 1/8 ounce, something like right here. This is a 4-pack of 1/8 ounce. Here's a couple 1/2 ounce weights. So these are 1/2 ounce, these are 1/8 ounce. And the thing about it is that you actually, get my camera here to focus on said tungsten instead of my stomach. But it's there's a major size difference. 1/8 ounce, 1/2 ounce. And again, this little lead weight right here is 5/16. It's pretty crazy when it comes to the fact that the size differentiation between the two is amazing. Bottom contact baits, tungsten is going to be where it's at if you can afford it. My best advice to you guys, if it's not broke, don't fix it. If you're fishing lead, don't feel like you're at a disadvantage because you're not throwing lead or you're not throwing tungsten. If you can't afford tungsten, I understand. You know, I'm not the guy to go out there and throw, you know, if I start breaking off a ton of tungsten and I'm fishing around brush and stuff, I'm probably going to tie on lead. Again, it's a cost saving thing for me. Tungsten is about 1.7 times more dense than lead you get, which equates to more sensitivity. The more sensitivity you have, the better you're going to feel fish biting, the better you're going to feel your surroundings. It's just going to allow you to get more bites, or not really get more bites, it's going to allow you to feel more bites when the fish actually, you know, are going to bite your bait. I do believe that there is, you know, cost saving ability when you pour your own baits. Again, if you like that or you have something, you know, you're interested in doing that, let me know. I can get you started with what molds and stuff that I would buy initially. But there is a cost to get into that game as well. You're going to need a lead pot. You're going to need some molds, which are not cheap. They're 50 to 90 bucks a piece, depending on what you're buying. But again, I fish both, in my opinion. With that being said, is that tungsten is worth the money if you can afford it. You're getting more sensitivity. Again, it's a lot more dense. You get a lot more weight in a lot smaller form factor, which is going to equate, in my opinion, for the fish not seeing it as well either. I fish it on all of my Texas rigs. If you see me have a Texas rig on, you can guarantee you that I have a tungsten weight on there. I also fish tungsten 100% of the time on my Carolina rigs. I just like the smaller profile, especially in those really hot summer months. Tungsten is more dense, which equates to better sensitivity, which may allow you to catch some more fish out on the water. But again, fish what you can afford, fish what you like, and again, if it's not broke, don't fix it. We'll see you next time on another line.